Hello everybody, it's Lazel here with another Magic the Gathering EDH deck tech. Today we are looking at Yenna, Redtooth Regent. She is a 4-mana 4/4 Elf Noble with the ability to choose target enchantment you control that doesn't have the same name as another permanent you control. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it isn't legendary. If the token is an aura, untap Yenna, Redtooth Regent, then scry 2 and activate it only as a sorcery for 2 mana and tapping her. This ability has a lot of text on it, but what I think is really interesting is that the token isn't legendary. So I am focusing this deck on copying a lot of legendary enchantments to generate a lot of value with which we will overwhelm our opponent. We are going to win the game by simply copying a lot of stuff, generating a lot of value and swinging for the win. For example, with cards like Calyx, Guided by Fate, 3 mana 2/2 with Constellation. Whenever Calyx, Guided by Fate or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Whenever Calyx or an enchanted creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may create a token that's a copy of a non-legendary enchantment you control. Do this only once each turn. Araster of the Endless Web, 4 mana 3/5 Reach. Whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/2 green spider creature token with Reach. Remember that you can copy Araster just as Calyx with Yenna's ability to generate even more value from those. Catilda, Dawnheart Martyrer, 3 mana, flying lifelink protection from vampires, and Catilda, Dawnheart Martyrer's power and toughness are each equal to the number of permanents you control that are spirits and or enchantments. We can also cast her Disturb Side for 5 mana, which is Catilda's Rising Dawn. Enchant Creature. Enchanted creature has flying, lifelink and protection from vampires, and it gets +X/+X, where X is the number of permanents you control that are spirits and or enchantments. If it would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, we exile it instead. We also play a bunch of enchantment auras in this deck because with those we untap Yenna and we also get to scry 2. For example, Bear Umbra, 4 mana enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has, whenever this creature attacks, untap all lands you control. In addition to that, it also has totem armor. Armadillo Cloak, 3 mana enchantment aura. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has trample. Whenever enchanted creature deals damage, you gain that much life. Another really strong aura is Ancestral Mask. For 3 mana, enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each other enchantment on the battlefield. As you have already seen from the thumbnail, I want to play a bunch of gods in this deck. For example, Nylea, God of the Hunt, 4 mana 6/6. As long as your devotion to green is less than 5, Nylea isn't a creature. She is indestructible, other creatures you control have trample, and for 4 mana, target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Remember that the tokens we create with Yenna's ability do have their mana symbols on them, so they count for the devotion. Nylea, Keen-Eyed, 4 mana 5/6. Indestructible. As long as your devotion to green is less than 5, Nylea isn't a creature. Creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. For 3 mana you can reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, put it into your hand. Otherwise, you may put it into your graveyard. Heliod, God of the Sun, 4 mana 5/6. As long as your devotion to white is less than 5, Heliod isn't a creature. Other creatures you control have vigilance. And for 4 mana, create a 2/1 white cleric enchantment creature token. Heliod, Suncrowned, 3 mana 5/5. As long as your devotion to white is less than 5, Heliod isn't a creature. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature or enchantment you control. For 2 mana, another target creature gains lifelink until end of turn. Karametra, God of Harvests, 5 mana 6/7. As long as your devotion to green and white is less than 7, Karametra isn't a creature. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may search your library for a forest or plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. I think especially in a Yenna deck we want to introduce Monarch as fast as possible. Court of Bounty, 4 mana enchantment. When Court of Bounty enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. If you're the Monarch, instead you may put a creature or land card from your hand onto the battlefield. Always remember that you can copy all of these enchantments. Court of Grace, 4 mana. When Court of Grace enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. If you're the Monarch, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying instead. Let's talk about a few more really powerful auras, and it doesn't only have to enchant creatures, we can also enchant our opponents. For example, with Curse of Clinging Webs, 3 mana enchant player. Whenever a non-token creature enchanted player controls dies, exile it, and you create a 1/2 green spider token with Reach. Curse of Conformity, 5 mana enchant player. Non-legendary creatures enchanted player controls have base power and toughness 3/3 and lose all creature types. Curse of Exhaustion, 4 mana enchant player. Enchanted player can't cast more than one spell each turn. But let's get back to enchanting our creatures. Alpha Authority, 2 mana enchant creature. Enchanted creature is hexproof and can't be blocked by more than one creature. Celestial Mantle, 6 mana enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3. Whenever enchanted creature deals combat damage to a player, double its controller's life total. Colossification, 7 mana enchant creature. When Colossification enters the battlefield, tapped enchanted creature. Enchanted creature gets +20/+20. The most important thing in Commander is drawing cards, so let's do so. With Dawn of a New Age, 2 mana enchantment. Dawn of a New Age enters the battlefield with a hope counter on it for each creature you control. At the beginning of your end step, remove a hope counter from Dawn of a New Age. If you do, draw a card. Then, if Dawn of the New Age has no hope counters on it, sacrifice it and you gain 4 life. Eidolon of Blossoms, 4 mana 2/2. Constellation, whenever Eidolon of Blossoms or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Sithis, Harvest Sand, 2 mana 1/2. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you gain 1 life and draw a card. Mesa Enchantress, 3 mana 0/2. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you may draw a card. Enchantress's Presence, 3 mana enchantment. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. And last but not least, for also another Anthem effect, Garruk's Uprising, 3 mana enchantment. When Garruk's Uprising enters the battlefield, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. Creatures you control have Trample. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Constellation is a really powerful keyword, especially in this deck, so we play Humbler of Mortals, 6 mana 5/5 with Constellation. Whenever Humbler of Mortals or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, creatures you control gain Trample until end of turn. Citizen Champion, 3 mana 1/3 with Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Citizen Champion and draw a card. Archon of Sun's Grace, 4 mana 3/4 flying lifelink. Pegasus creatures you control have lifelink. Constellation, whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 white Pegasus creature token with flying. Composer of Spring, 2 mana 1/3. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. If you control 6 or more enchantments, instead you may put a creature or land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. Boon of the Spirit Realm, 5 mana enchantment. Whenever Boon of the Spirit Realm or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a blessing counter on Boon of the Spirit Realm. Creatures you control get +1/+1 for each blessing counter on Boon of the Spirit Realm. And to play another really big threat, Nylea's Colossus, 8 mana 6/6. Whenever Nylea's Colossus or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, double target creature's power and toughness until end of turn. All of these big enchanted creatures can look really scary to your opponent, so you also need to protect them. Let's start off with Destiny Spinner, 2 mana 2/3. Creatures and enchantment spells you control can't be countered. For 4 mana, target land you control becomes an XX elemental creature with trample and haste until end of turn, where X is the number of enchantments you control. It's still a land. Flowering of the White Tree, 2 mana, legendary enchantment. Legendary creatures you control get +2/+1 and have ward 1. Non-legendary creatures you control get +1/+1. Copy this one, create a non-legendary copy of it, and you have a powerful Anthem effect plus a ward on all of your legendary creatures. Ghostly Prison, 3 mana enchantment. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each creature they control that's attacking you. Heroic Intervention, 2 mana instant. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Sphere of Safety, 5 mana enchantment. Creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays X for each of those creatures, where X is the number of enchantments you control. And of course, Teferi's Protection, 3 mana instant. Until your next turn, your life total can't change and you gain protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out. Exile Teferi's Protection. You want to win more? You get it. Faithbound Judge, 3 mana 4/4 Defender Flying Vigilance. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Faithbound Judge has 2 or fewer judgment counters on it, put a judgment counter on it. As long as Faithbound Judge has 3 or more judgment counters on it, it can attack as though it didn't have Defender. Its backside is way more powerful. Sinner's Judgment. Enchant player. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a judgment counter on Sinner's Judgment. Then, if there are 3 or more judgment counters on it, enchanted player loses the game. If Sinner's Judgment would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. I think Felidar Retreat is really powerful in this deck. Felidar Retreat, 4 mana enchantment, landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, choose one. Create a 2/2 White Cat Beast creature token, or put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Those creatures gain vigilance until end of turn. Eidolon of Countless Battles, 3 mana 0/0. You can bestow it onto a creature as an aura. Eidolon of Countless Battles and enchanted creature each get +1/+1 for each creature you control, and +1/+1 for each aura you control. Hallowed Haunting, 4 mana enchantment. As long as you control 7 or more enchantments, creatures you control have flying and vigilance. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, create a White Spirit Cleric creature token with this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of spirits you control. Nyxborn Behemoth, 12 mana 10/10. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total mana value of non-creature enchantments you control. It has trample, and for 2 mana and sacrificing another enchantment, Nyxborn Behemoth gains indestructible until end of turn. And of course, All That Glitters, 2 mana enchantment aura, enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. Alright guys, these were a few ideas of cards that I would play in Yenna Redtooth Regent. Let me know down in the comments below which cards you would add to the deck, which legendary creature I shall feature next, and then I would say, see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.